And welcome back to the third hour today. Janelle and I working from home, of course, and Craig is holding down the fort in Studio 1A. And with so many of us stuck at home around the world, one of the unintended consequences has been the impact on the environment. Well, as we mentioned, today is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. We wanted to take a closer look at what's been happening over the past couple of months and what lessons we might be able to learn for the future.
That's literally a coyote.
Coyotes roaming the streets of Chicago. In some places, sea turtles nesting on beaches for the first time in years.
We predict that with these fewer interactions, if the beach closures go on any longer due to COVID, that we will see possibly more successful nesting events with the sea turtles.
Wildlife around the world, ranging freely in cities and regions normally bustling with people. Just one of the ways in which the coronavirus lockdown has quickly and dramatically changed our environment. Less foot traffic, less waste, less energy consumption, allowing certain animals to thrive, and impacting the Earth's atmosphere as well. What kind of reductions have we seen?
We've seen reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, those gases that contribute to climate change. But we've also seen reductions in sort of the typical air pollution, the particulates, the smog. And we've seen, remarkably, some amazing improvements in air quality.
In India, for the first time in decades, the majestic snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas were revealed to the people of Jalandhar more than 120 miles away. And last week, in the normally polluted city of New Delhi, clear skies. Here in the United States, the plummeting emissions were evident almost immediately. 2 weeks ago, Los Angeles, a city of nearly 4 million people and more than 6 million cars, registered the cleanest air on the planet. While these signs of renewal are encouraging, climatologists say the change in the air is only temporary and not nearly enough.
We could be seeing a reduction in our emissions this year in 2020, at the most probably 5%. And while that may sound like a lot, for context, compare that to the roughly 8% that the international climate science community has told us that we need to reduce emissions by year after year.
When the world finally heals and our societies come back, is there a way to make these changes permanent without hurting our economy?
We can have a strong economy, but improve our air quality, and they're taking steps in that direction. We can reduce our emissions of greenhouse gases by switching from fossil fuels to renewable energy. We know that wind and solar work. We know they're economic. We know that they're growing very rapidly.
As we come out of this, is there a silver lining?
A pandemic or a financial crisis is nobody's idea of a solution to the climate crisis at all. But if we do look back and see that when humans, whether we had a choice or not, made changes and the needle moved in terms of the global climate and the environment, that may be seen as, a reminder that we're in control and we have a responsibility and the ability to actually move that needle.
And on this Earth Day, we wanted to announce that NBC News is joining a global journalism initiative that's called Covering Climate Now, bringing climate stories to the forefront, not just in this country, but around the globe. It includes NBC News, MSNBC, and Telemundo. And guys, we are really excited about this here at the NBC Climate Unit. We are going to bring you the best in climate coverage journalism.
It's a great initiative. It's a fantastic
I thought
initiative.
that story was fascinating.
Los Angeles. Who knew?
Well, thank you.
Unintended consequence. Al, thank you so much for that. Thank you for shining a light on it as well. When we continue here on the third hour of today, an incredible She Made It success story.
What we're seeing
Welcome.
what we're seeing is the developments of the way things used to be and the way things should be versus the reality that humanity has created for this planet. Just like I've told my viewers, it was very, very unnatural to have tornadoes to hit in December, November and December, and January in this area. Just as of 2 weeks ago, coming on 2 weeks ago, we had tornado outbreak on Easter Sunday, April. That's more consistent of what's supposed to go on, but at the same time, to see an outbreak of 130 something tornadoes that began in Louisiana, ravaged Mississippi, ravaged Alabama, ravaged part of Georgia, ravaged part of Tennessee again, is unlike anything normally back in the 60s and 70s that we was adapted to. Mother Nature is crying out because we have upset the apple cart. And we have done this in a very, very consistently slow manner, kind of like the frog boiling water theory. You know, the frog and the water don't realize that the water is boiling if you turn it up gradually. And eventually it will kill the frog. But if you was to throw the frog into the boiling water after that it had become boiling, then the frog would immediately jump out because it realizes, my God, this is going to kill me. It's the same thing with what we are doing to the environment here on the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So please, whenever people talk to you about global warming, environmental crisis, they should pay more attention to that than they do other things in life, especially whenever we are doing it to ourselves. We are going to have to readjust. We've got the tools now to do so pertaining to modern day advances with the internet, technology, pertaining to media, social media, be able to Skype, be able to talk to people. We're going to have to put limitations on how many people can fly, where they can go, and it's going to have to be essential travel. We're going to have to modify our airplanes to where they're not putting out as much carbon dioxide. We're going to have to get rid of a lot of this old stuff that is out there on the road that is burning so much carbon dioxide, regardless whether it be a old boat motor, a 2-phase or a 4-phase boat motor, versus an 18-wheeler out there that don't even come close to of lining up with the EPA standards. We're going to have to take these things serious if our children is going to have any type of a future at all, to where they don't have to worry about a raging tornado going over 5 states in less than a 5 or 6 hour period. We're going to have to take these things serious if we're going to be able to have enough food to produce to feed the rest of the world. We're going to have to take these things serious pertaining to changing our environment to where the South becomes the North as far as environment, the weather-wise. And there is a difference in the weather versus the environment. The environment is what controls the weather. That's getting up into the atmosphere and the hemisphere. These are the things that we are damaging, in addition to draining all the oil resources out of the ground. We're going to have to re-engineer our way of thinking and how we communicate, how many people can fly, where we can fly to. I mean, we've got the tools today in the software and hardware pertaining to being able to socialize still on media platforms. No, it's not like the real thing as far as actually touching, holding, being that close to somebody. But I think compromises and sacrifices need to be made at this particular point in time, especially understanding how severe that our global warming challenges are. Even though we do have a president that has showed himself to be idiotic in the eyes of science. You cannot continue to be in denial. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how crazy acting that you are. You cannot continue to be in denial after seeing the facts that has occurred just within the past 2 months of basically the world shutting down on account of this pandemic. It's come a time to where people has to wake up and learn to reinvent.
Back this morning, a woman whose job doesn't stink.
She's the creator of an insanely popular toilet spray. Jill Martin caught up with her to find out how she made it.
This is going to go off the rails.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Susie Batiste is the woman behind Poo-Pourri. She just made the Forbes Self-Made Women list, and I recently found out how she went from tough times to enjoying the sweet smell of success.
I had worked with oils. It'd been my hobby for years. I was the closet hippie, you know, and I just started researching and playing, kind of going, what oils would cover odor?
Susie Batiste's Before You Go toilet spray called Poo-Pourri masks bathroom odor. The name is genius.
I had everybody trying to come up with names, and my sister-in-law called, and she goes, Poo-Pourri. I go, no, Poo-Pourri, like potpourri. It just clicked.
Batiste says the idea started with her ex-husband. You must be very close with your ex-husband because he is the inspiration to Poo-Pourri.
He is.
Because he pooped
so
a lot.
Grateful for him, that horrible diet. We went to a dinner party, and someone said something about bathroom odor, can it be trapped? And I literally felt like a zing up my arm, and I went, I work with oils, I can do that.
Batiste worked on the natural formula for 9 months. So your husband would poop, you said, 3 times a day.
Oh yeah, thank goodness. And one day my husband walked out of the bathroom, and he goes, oh my God, we're gonna be millionaires. I said, what do you mean? He goes, do you realize what you've done? Like, you've taken the smell out of crap, we'll say. And I'm like, what do you mean, it works? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh.
With $25,000 in savings, Batiste sold her first bottle in 2007. Poo-Pourri made $1 million in that first year amidst the economic recession. The company has sold 65 million bottles to date. And this year, Batiste was featured on Forbes' Self-Made Women list. What was that like when you got the call or opened the page and saw that number?
I literally laid in my kitchen floor for 4 hours. I could cry right now. I'm sobbing.
I know.
It was breaking patterns of generational poverty. And just like the gratitude just comes bursting out of me like, oh my God.
Batiste struggled in business for years. She filed for bankruptcy twice. At 19 when her bridal shop failed, and at 38 when her staffing startup ran out of money.
I was devastated. I lost the house. I lost the cars. It was brutally painful. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I lied to my kids. And I lost everything.
If you had to pinpoint the moment that was your lowest, but that you still had hope, what is your advice?
I thought money and success were going to make me happy. I found happiness within myself. And then that's what you rebuild from.
Today, Batiste's Poo-Pourri company has become known for viral videos like how to poop at work. Hold it in a... Oh. Uh-oh. And their most recent video, Want Your Poop to Smell Gorge.
What are you doing pooping in here? You better get your swipe right self back out there.
Oh, I'm good.
Batiste now gives back to budding female entrepreneurs, hosting grassroots meetups appropriately called She Made It. Money now almost seems secondary to you, and really you've told me your mission is all about helping other women.
I'm a huge advocate of women being in business because we can actually change the world. Not because I want women to overtake the world, but I do want to see a balance, and I want to see a little more equality. And we have everything within us to make it happen.
We say yes.
Yeah.
She's an incredible woman, and it really is sort of a hot topic that we were talking about, because you really, I'm not a bathroom talk girl, but you were like, I use it all the time. And
Well,
you said, my mom,
I don't. A while ago, she's like, I found the best stuff. I got it at this boutique in Wichita. And I said, what? So she sent me some.
Some poopery?
Yes.
Yeah.
And who knew it was
We
a
keep
thing?
it in both our bathrooms, and it's just, I feel like also when people come over to the house,
Yeah.
it's there.
This
So
may
then-
save my marriage. Because I have to use a separate bathroom.
And I have a.
And it's 9:45 in the morning.
no, because
Well,
but you
It's already gone twice.
So, that's right.
But it's a situation. It's a real life situation.
Excuse me.
A lot of couples don't. A lot of couples
I
say.
have to go to commercial.
Yeah. So
$10 a bottle, Jill.
$10 a bottle, 3 to 5 spritches before
These
you
smell
go.
so good.
That was a great
Before you
behind
go.
the brand.
We're done
We'll
already?
be right back. Oh, that was good.
Still to come on the third hour of today, we've been talking a lot this week about having kids.
Mommy brain is absolutely a thing.
Your burning questions answered, what no one tells you about being a mom. Plus, we have a bronze medalist in the house. Adam Rippon tells us why he's lacing up his skates again for a whole new reason. Welcome back. This week we've been talking a lot about having kids and families, and this morning we're launching a new series with Today.com called Modern Motherhood.
No matter how much you prepare or how much advice you get, there will be things that no one tells you. So we asked you to share some of your candid thoughts on being a mom, and here's some of the answers we received.
Mommy brain is totally a thing.
And guess what? It doesn't disappear after you have your kids. It gets worse.
Mommy brain is absolutely a thing. Wait, what was the question?
I absolutely have felt like a failure when I was breastfeeding.
The second night is awful because your baby's awake and wants to eat and you don't have any milk.
I just wanted my body back. I wanted my breasts back.
Some people experience love at first sight, some people don't. I don't think those warm fuzzies come until you start to get to know each other a little bit better.
You know what? I did not love my firstborn. I'm just being real, but now I love him.
Sometimes it takes a little bit for that love to kind of grow and develop.
Parenting is kind of like a guessing game.
There's a lot of stuff nobody told me.
I'm never sure if what I'm doing is the right thing.
Nobody talks about this.
This is hard, and sometimes we don't know what we're doing, but ultimately, we're doing a good job.
And Dr. Catherine Berndorf and Dr. Alexandra Sachs are both reproductive psychiatrists and the authors of What No One Tells You, a guide to your emotions from pregnancy to motherhood. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
I think the running theme through all of those women is, my goodness, it's just an emotional roller coaster, and so many things are hard, and some things are easy, but not most things. And
And no one tells you.
No one tells you anything.
There are so many books out there about your body and about how to prepare the baby, but this is really a big deal for your heart and your mind, and it can be good and bad at the same time. It's a human experience. It's both.
Let's dig in here and give some free therapy here. Let's talk about some of the things that people are saying that no one tells you about. The first one you have is that there are no right parenting decisions. There's no manual, there's no template. And I think when we close our eyes and we think of our mothers or our grandmothers or our aunts, everything seemed easier, or we never heard them struggle. So then we think, why are we struggling?
It seems easier, right?
Yes.
It looks easier for other people, but really everyone's having the same problems and questions and challenges. We just don't share it, right? It's not until you say, I'm struggling, that you might hear someone else say, hey, me too.
Right? But even just trying to go through those decisions, C-section or natural, breastfeed or bottle feed, I mean, how do you make those decisions?
Here's the good news. There are so few right answers in parenting, and that means most of the time you're not doing anything wrong. Every day is a new opportunity for learning, both about your own self, what you need in your journey, and about how to relate and react and get to know your child too.
We've talked a lot about fertility, as you guys know, over the last week or so, and a lot of people, don't talk about the M word, and that's miscarriage. And I think a lot of women are talking this week about the fact that they didn't realize that so many women have had them because we don't talk about them. But it's an issue.
Super common.
Yeah.
Right? If you're trying to get pregnant or have kids, it's very likely you've experienced a miscarriage, right? And often, until you talk about it, others don't come forward and say, hey, I had that too. It remains one of those things you whisper and is considered taboo, but shouldn't be.
Right.
It happens to almost everybody.
And we really applaud you guys for talking about this so openly on this show. It's reducing so much shame and stigma for women all over the world. You're not alone. There's nothing wrong with you. This is not your fault.
And I've gotten so many comments of people just wanting now to share their story and open up about it. This one was interesting. No one tells you a baby can pull you and your partner apart.
Yeah, it's again one of those things where you think, oh, we're gonna have a baby, it's gonna bring us together. In some cases, it's gonna save our marriage or the partnership. Right? You've heard that. It's actually, it can pull you apart.
Why is that?
Because it's complicated and who's doing what, and it gets kind of tit for tat, and I did, you didn't. It's really hard, and I think if you're not talking about it, it can pull you apart.
Communication is very important.
And some women have talked about that at times when they had a baby, it felt like a loss. What is that about? And a lot of people have resonated with that too.
New beginnings always involve endings. You're saying goodbye to a part in your life, and it's okay to feel sad about that while you're simultaneously happy about this new beginning. We often feel both things at a time. Ambivalence is absolutely normal in human relationships and in developmental transitions, and we really want people to feel like there's no shame in that. It's not a sign you're going to be a bad mom. It's not a sign that there's anything wrong with you. It's just part of the process.
Yeah. And I feel like moms certainly do take a lot of the weight, a lot of the blame. They feel like they have to make all the decisions, but this is an emotional time for the dad too, who sometimes has to accept that he's just going to take a back seat for a little while.
We hear that a lot. That, while the mom gets focused on, right, and the baby, and the dad gets a little forgotten, and that feels bad. And I think that the dad needs some airtime too, and goes through the same things as well. Maybe not physically, but it's got a new baby too, and a life transition as well.
Yeah, and that's a reminder also for adoptive parents, for same-sex couples. Becoming a new parent is a major transition. You don't have to physically deliver a baby to go through that. And that's true for some hormonal changes as well with the bonding hormones.
Right.
Thank you guys for coming in this morning. We're having the discussion on this
We
show.
are. And sleep is very important too, so get that when you can. Sleep is medicine. Don't forget to check out today.com/parents for more on this book and more from our new series, Modern Motherhood.
And I want to weigh in on what they're talking about. First of all, reflecting upon Earth Day in regards to what the Bible talks about as far as birth pains. Birth pains as far as these great, horrendous sorrows that has fallen from the sky, regardless whether it comes in the form of floods, famines, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, etc. It talks about these things in the Bible, that these will be the birth pains of the sorrows because of all the sin in the world reflecting upon the atmosphere. Okay? And the last thing I want to say is this. How about the fathers out there who subsequently could not make the marriage work? And they wound up having to bow out of that marriage. Even though they cared for their first love, they cared for their first wife, but they could not manage that type of stress. Today, I'm one of those fathers. I'm one of those people that has regrets that I didn't hang on to that first marriage of raising my firstborn and my only born pertaining to my son. I have regrets that I wasn't there managing the sniffles and the colds and all the other stuff that goes along with it. I do remember parts of the relationship in raising the son, the child, pertaining to the diapers at the time. We was using cloth diapers that required that you had to wash them. And I do remember some of the things that we went through that at the time I thought was absolutely appalling. But now at my age, at the age of 59, I wish that I had went ahead and basically force-fed myself into remaining in the marriage. Of course, I had complications whenever I fell off of a 4-story building. I had 2 broken legs, 2 crushed ankles. That was during the time that we was trying to raise my firstborn. He was just an infant at the time growing up. And I still remember those very pleasant moments that we did have, but I also remember some of those unpleasant moments that we had. And of course, a lot of that was engaged upon to drug inducement that not only that I was taking from the doctor because of all the injuries, but because of the drug inducement that I got hooked on being on street drugs. That added that much more instability into that marriage. And of course, whenever she left, she got involved in somebody else's life. At that point in time, I was only a weekend dad. A weekend dad that I transfigurated into in a good way, even though I had to drive usually every other week, sometimes once a month, no less than once a month, down to Memphis to pick up my son and bring him back up here to his grandmother and grandfather's house, regardless whether it was on my side or the mother's side. I become a weekend dad. But there was so much about my son's life that I wasn't there for. I wasn't there whenever he first went to first grade. I wasn't there whenever he graduated in other grades. And I wasn't there during the bad times and the good times. And because of it, it has caused a division. It has caused a wedge, I believe, in between our relationship, between his life and mine, because we don't no longer have that buddy type, oh, gee, Dad, yes, let's go fishing together, versus, hey, Dad, I really wish that you was around. We really don't have that bond. And I kind of missed that bond at the age of 59 because things could have been different. But keep in mind, there was also a silver lining to my particular relationship of not having to be exposed, fully exposed to my son, because I was dealing at the time with an emotional stress syndrome coming from my father, pertaining to him being in the military. And believe it or not, my younger brother told me more than once, Dennis, that's the main reason why that I didn't get hooked up and have a family, is because I didn't want to be like my father. I did not want to have the same characteristics towards being angry and showing distress and basically coming off the loose end and flying off the loose end and flying off the handle and showing myself in such of an angry, disappointing way. And believe it or not, the things that our parents exposed us to does have a building makeup towards who we are and what we do today. And I can actually say the same to some degree, that, you know, I'm glad that those characteristics in myself did not necessarily show up in my son, pertaining to always being angry, not being able to handle my anger management issues. But if I weigh it out between what I didn't get versus what I tried to protect him from, it really doesn't stack up because of the misses that I missed of not being there as a full-time dad versus just a weekend dad. There's no comparison. If somebody can stick it out through a marriage, through thick and thin, from the beginning to the end, I feel like that the rewards are much more successful than the failures. If you can do it as a young parent, male or female, trying to build those building blocks together to where ultimately, in the span of a lifetime, you can both look back and say, you know what? I'm kind of glad that I experienced what I experienced. It's kind of the same way with my experiences, because I've become an adult to realizing that my dad couldn't control a lot of the things that he was embarked upon, regardless whether he couldn't control it because of what he was raised up in back in the 20s and the 30s, regardless whether he couldn't control what he couldn't control because of the military, or regardless whether he couldn't control what he couldn't control because he basically walked away from God and he was a miserable human being. I now, as an adult, can look back and say, that's the reason why that my father was the way that my father was. He had this going on, he had that going on, and obviously he had this going on. And of course, he was the one that paid the ultimate sacrifice, especially in the elderly golden years of his life, because I would have loved to have rebonded with my biological father in his 80s after me realizing that he was at the age of fixing to check out. He was fixing to die. He had already had 2 major heart bypass surgeries. He had had another incident where a piece of steel fell over on top of him that probably should have broken his neck or broken his collarbone, and which I think it did break something in his shoulder. That basically was his downcline. But he was the one that ultimately had to go through those regrets of not realizing that if he would have been just a little more humbler, a little more nicer, especially in his golden years, maybe he could have rebonded with his son Dennis. And I feel like, and David and I have always felt like, that the night that the day that he actually died, leading up into his death, that night about 2:30 or 3 o'clock, he was down in the nursing home, only been there for like a week, in Humboldt, the veterans nursing home down there, and he wanted to make a telephone call to my brother David, and they would not allow for him to do so. And of course, that night, that morning, his vital signs got worse, and the next thing you know, they had to rush him to Madison County in Jackson, Tennessee, and that same morning, he basically went into a semi-coma state where his organs was failing him, and at that point in time, they called in the priest, and they called in the family, which once more, I was dealing with what I was having to deal with certain issues pertaining to Kentucky laws, and Oklahoma laws and Tennessee laws, and plus me having to deal with what I was dealing with my father, my biological father. Every time I'd get around him, he would get angry. I thought that I was going to be responsible for possibly throwing him off into a coronary arrest. So at the time, whenever I got the telephone call about my father, I was in Kansas City, Missouri, working, doing body work, trying to make a living for myself. That way I didn't become a panhandler or a beggar out here wanting somebody to cushion my responsibilities for me. I got regrets that he was not in check to the point of recognizing the extent of where his health was, to the fact that he was still brutal even up until the end as far as being able to reconnect with him during his last years of being here upon to the planet. But once more, let's not get focused on that. Let's stay focused upon Earth Day pertaining to the birth pains that it talks about in the Bible. On the 50th anniversary, today is the day that we should take in remembrance of the planet, what we're doing to the planet, what we're doing to ourselves, and recognize that there is some sort of a silver lining in regards to this major pandemic that has struck in the planet, to the point that now we can actually see the rehealing, the transfiguration of what it could be if we all pull together in recognizing that we're going to have to change our methods. We're going to have to change how we communicate. We're going to have to change all this road travel and all this air travel. We're going to have to make some severe changes in the next near present and future if our children and our children's children are going to have a future for their future. I think this should be a major eye-opener, an awakening for the planet, regardless whether your name is Donald J. Trump or whoever. This should be a major eye-opener on the anniversary, the 50th anniversary on Earth Day, of people waking up and realizing that we only have one planet. And we are all centrally connected together, regardless whether we like it or not, in regards to facing human catastrophes together as a group of people that's in the same boat, per se. So if this does anything at all pertaining to this major health crisis that we're all in right now, and it is major, and it is a health crisis, it should be an eye-opener towards what that we have been doing to the only planet that we have to live on. And it should be an eye-opener towards what that we have been doing to each other, and how that we have taken these things for granted. Things that we don't need to take for granted, because one day, our fathers, our mothers, our sons, our daughters, our cousins, our aunts, our neighbors, our friends, they won't be there. They won't be there to make amends, to get it turned around, to make a readjustment. And maybe this is God's way, in some sort of a weird way of, hey, I'm giving y'all a second chance. Now, what y'all do with it as a Homo sapien race, not only the Earthlings in America, but the Earthlings in China, and the Earthlings in Russia, and the Earthlings in South America, and the Earthlings in Argentina, and the Earthlings in Australia, and the Earthlings in Ireland. What y'all do with it is going to be up to y'all, and how you re-heal not only yourselves, but how you re-heal the earth on the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. Thank you to my viewers. Good luck to all of us as we struggle in life's journeys, as our paths cross and crisscross and go fro and far and wide. And may those who are seeking a more divine, righteous way continue to prosper and be blessed by the Almighty Yahweh and His precious Son, Yeshua, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. God bless. Take care. And good luck in all of our struggles. Shalom.